Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of 3. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing up baby is about to get a little easier. Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Ashley Cooley, and I'm really grateful to be able to share this episode with you today. I had a wonderful conversation with my friend Kim Marshall. She's a mom of 2 and founder of Roots and Wings Childhood. She's a conscious parenting coach, and she helps mothers unlearn and relearn patterns that allow them to care for themselves and their children with connection instead of control. I really love her approach, and I got to say, the more I have come to learn about parenting and parenting little ones, it was very much a learning experience. And it still is, but certainly as they were younger. And I found that learning more about child behavior and what's common, what to expect and why, it really helped me understand and feel for them and have empathy and actually help them with their feelings as opposed to trying to control them. Anyway, it can make parenting a whole lot easier and make everybody a whole lot happier. So can't wait to share this with you. But not only are you going to learn from Kim here very shortly, you're also going to get access to a freebie of hers that she entitled Understanding Toddlers. That's going to be in our Bringing Up Baby community. And it's free to join our community. I'll have the link in the show notes, or you can check out birthbabysleep.ca. But this is where you're going to find all the extras. And not only that, Kim's actually joining me next week on Tuesday, September 24th at 12 p.m. Atlantic time. We're doing an open Q&A on parenting right inside the community. So hope you can join us. But without further ado, here's my conversation with Kim. Hi, Kim. How are you? It's nice to see you today.
Hey, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. This topics surrounding older kiddos and behavior and whether that's challenging or just different. It comes up so much, even to myself as a sleep consultant. I find it's surprising yet not, because a lot of these things can go hand in hand. You and I've spoken a few times and met a couple times. We both have shall we call them older children? They're some
School
tweens, but
age.
we're getting
Yeah.
in that zone. So we do have probably our own personal stories and experiences around this. But I'd love to, before we dive into that and all the stories, I'd love to just kind of get a sense of you and how you work with families, and what kinds of, are there emerging themes that you feel or hear in this kind of behavior realm? Kind of talk us through
Mhm.
that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a conscious parenting coach. I work with parents and really focus on leadership, because I really believe that as parents, we're leaders in our home, and it's such a noisy, crazy culture. It can be very confusing, and we can be filled with lots of guilt, shame, self-doubt. And so I really focus on helping mothers, especially, just really zero in on what's happening within the 4 walls of their home, because that's what we can control. And as long as it feels good to you, that's all that matters. There's no one way to do this. So I coach parents all over the world, just like this, over Zoom. And I absolutely love what I do. It's my second career. I used to be a classroom teacher. During the pandemic, I realized that I really wanted to help children, and the best way to do that was to help their families. Obviously, that was a time when there was a lot of, crisis, a lot of panic, a lot of trauma happening in homes. And so I kind of stepped up in my role in my family, and then helped other women lead their own families too.
I love that. And I'm so glad that we got the chance to meet, and we can share some of this knowledge that you work with families around the world with, because I didn't realize until I started having my own kids, and really until my babies started becoming toddlers and little independent little humans, just how much I needed to learn about myself. Like I tell people all the time that I feel like my kids have been and continue to teach me way more than I think I will ever teach them. They're exploring, they're learning from all kinds of avenues and I myself and my husband are part of that, but what I've been learning about myself and just life and
Mm,
dealing with my own emotions and triggers and things like has
yes.
been astronomical. And I'm no expert. I am still on that journey.
Yeah, we
But
all are.
is that what you find though? Like how
Yeah.
often might someone come to you as a sort of like preventative, like, okay, I'm about to have children or we have a baby and I want
Mm,
to like learn about this going forward versus like, wow, we're
mm,
in the trenches. I don't know how
yeah.
to get out of this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, not a lot of people are thinking proactively and preventatively. So most of the parents that find me are, trying to put out a fire, trying to solve a problem that has come up. And just like you're mentioning, like there are so many layers. And for those who are willing and able and open-minded, open-hearted, this can be such an enlightening personal development journey.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it
totally.
starts with the child, and they come to me and they're like, fix my child. And I'm just of the mindset that no child is broken, no child needs to be fixed. And parenting is really an inside job. It's the
Mm,
parenting. So
mm-hmm,
they
mm-hmm,
think that I'm going to be helping their child, and I actually kind of reverse flip that. It ends up being parenting work. It ends up being work that we ourselves do. Um, and children are mirrors. They're mirrors to the parts of ourselves that are unhealed. And so when we can look inward and do that work, then everything else falls into place. Our children, um, it's not that things need to be fixed, but if things are very uncomfortable, right? They're not sleeping, they're not listening, they're not pooping, they're not eating. Like if we perceive that as a problem, we put a lot of negative energy on it, and the outcome isn't productive. So it's really about learning
mm.
about what's going on underneath.
Such a that's a great point. I totally agree with that. And that's the kind of things that I've been learning as a parent that
Mhm.
um and I think sometimes in a way I could get into a whole this would be another episode about how I was parented, how all of us were
Yes.
parented, but
Yes.
there seems to be quite a shift in terms of where um parents nowadays are like seeing how like hey maybe the ways and things that were done back when we were kids, we might want to do things differently. And because we're learning about why and how and what kind of can result from that. Um, so anyway, I'm not
Mhm.
going to go down that road specifically. However, in that, how important is it that we as parents are in tune with how we're parenting? Like why is that so important? Because there's lots of different ways to parent. I'm sure you come across lots of different
Mhm.
uh parenting styles, but how important is it that we're in tune with what we're actually doing and saying with our
Mhm.
kids?
Yeah, it's really important because if what you're doing is working, then you probably won't seek out coaching. So something's misaligned. And so just jumping off that last point that you had, yeah, often parents are learning about themselves and thinking, I was raised this way and I do not want to do the same thing. I want to stop that. I want to do it in a different way. And what I'm seeing a lot of is parents swinging fully in the opposite direction, which can feel permissive. And that's the whole gentle parenting movement, which I don't really align with. I really think there's a sweet spot.
Mm,
We don't have to lead with fear or force or coercion, but also we need to have clear expectations and clear communication and family values so that our yeses and nos are consistent and so that our children have predictability. So there's parenting over, there's parenting under, and then there's parenting with. And so that sweet spot is really being able to clearly define that path in the middle where you're parenting with your child. You're clearly the authority, you're the parent, but you also honor the unique needs of your child. You understand they have voice and choice within reason. And that's the part that can be so gray. It's so slippery. Parents think like, I grew up with so much control, so I want to give my child all the control. And that's equally
Mm-hmm.
dysregulating. And
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Or whether they're, and I'm sure, no doubt, and I have my own scenarios where it's like, okay, I want to do this differently, or I want to do that, and consciously thinking of that. But
Mm-hmm.
then there could be times too, I know there's times with a lot of us that we're doing things automatically because that's just been ingrained in us. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, maybe raising voices, maybe looking to say punishment or grounding or timeouts
Mm-hmm.
when something quote unquote bad is going on, where maybe not. I'm not saying one's right or wrong or anything, but just like if that was done to us, if that's how we were brought up, then that's just
Mm-hmm.
what we know in terms of parenting. Unless
Mm-hmm.
you've been a parent before, how do we know what we're doing except for what we see others do and what's been done to us? So I think
Totally.
there's so much value in connecting with someone like yourself that can really shed light on that and have
Mm-hmm.
actual strategies and things you can do. And it's not about like failing as a parent or you don't know what you're doing. It's okay. I say all the time, I don't know what I'm doing.
Nobody does.
We don't. I actually said that to my 11-year-old. I know we're going to be talking about slightly younger children too here, but
Mm,
just the other day, my 11-year-old, we're just, because she's a tween, we're experiencing different decisions and things that we need to
mhm.
make as parents. And she kept hounding me. I was saying I didn't know, or I was saying no, not right now to something she was asking, and she kept asking. And I finally said, Stella, I don't know what the answer is. And I need to think
Mhm.
about it. And I need to talk to your father about it. And I got to figure that out. So I'll come back to you. But I
Yes.
don't even know the answer right now because I literally don't. And I think sometimes
Yeah.
that's okay too. But then that's when I might have to
Yeah.
call someone like yourself if I really
Yeah.
can't
Because
figure it
she's
out.
your oldest, right?
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're like kind of raising
New
yourself with
territory.
her 100%. And I think that's
Mhm.
amazing that you can pause and be like, I need to think about this because that's also modeling to our children that, you know, we are in growth and
Mm,
that
mm,
decisions take time and, that you're just thinking about it and you're giving a lot of intention behind the decision instead of just like reacting or just doing what she wants or what you think you should do like
right.
so I think
Right.
that pause is actually one of the best things we can learn to do as parents.
Mm. Oh, well, cool. Thank you very much. That
Mhm.
it was a learning. It was I did not always that prior to when it made me like super frustrated and like I keep telling the same answer and you keep asking the same question. So I had to come up with a way uh
Yeah.
to try to redirect it, I guess. And I was just like admitting full truth. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about let's bring it back to I hear this term a lot. I've said it myself. It's something that like the quote unquote 4 month sleep regression you hear as your child approaches the age of 2. And we start to notice a little bit of independence, or they're kind of exploring their own autonomy. And so different behaviors emerge than when you might have what you might have noticed or experienced when they were babies. So we hear this term, the terrible twos, and I have some feelings about it. Maybe you do too. But I'd love for you to, if you could maybe talk us through just what's going on developmentally here with our toddlers and our
Hmm.
babies or children that are getting a little bit older. What's going on developmentally? Because that
Hmm.
I'm sure I know has a big role in kind of their behavior.
Yes. Yes. I have so much to say. Well, first of all, the way we view a situation is going to impact the way we respond to it. And so this is again like a piece of culture, right? Terrible twos. Like we're just painting this picture that it's going to be awful and our children are terrible and we're not going to be able to manage. And it just paints this picture of us being really strung out and the child being like totally on a rampage. Um,
And two, that if they're going through say, a tantrum or having, again, maybe that's not the right term to use as a negative way, but they're laying on the floor and going through an emotional situation, and we're thinking, oh, this is the terrible twos I've heard about, then it's a kind of like permission to like, oh, well,
Totally.
this is how it is. There's nothing I can do. Like, I just, what, et cetera, et cetera. Right?
Yes, victim mindset.
Mm,
Yeah, which doesn't empower us. It doesn't give us any understanding on what's happening from a brain or heart-based perspective. So the first thing I would want to share with parents is just that there's so much compassion that's needed. Our children at 2 or 3 are going through rapid physical, mental, emotional, spiritual changes. So it is a short window of time. And I don't know about you, but terrible twos sometimes show up more like that tricky period. I see it more in 3, actually. I see
hmm
3-year-olds causing a lot of discomfort for their parents. 3 is probably uh, a lot of the time I'll have parents reach out when one of their children is 3. And
mm,
why that's happening is because of the changes, but at 3, the child is separating from the primary caregiver and learning to be their own person. And so that's like highly triggering for parents because they are not as, they just don't do what they say and wear what they want them to wear and go where they want them to go. They have their own voices, they have their own opinions. And so, is that a problem? No, but it is a problem because we have these expectations that, um, we have this vision, we have this, you know, very linear idea of how things should be. And so it's very inconvenient to have another person with their own agenda, especially when we're trying to get somewhere on time. Because, those things take a lot of time to navigate, they take a lot of patience. So,
mm.
one of the things that's so important for parents of young children 2, 3 to realize is that for us to increase our capacity for that discomfort, we need to be resourcing ourselves in a new way. So we need to be taking care of ourselves, really focusing on sleep, nutrition, movement, connection, like all the things that we know we should do. But when we can take care of ourselves, we have a better chance of meeting their needs because uh, yeah, that
Yes.
capacity, we can get stretched a little easier.
This is one of the biggest learnings that I have been fortunate enough to experience. I
Yeah.
when we I'll tell a little story, but when our oldest was 5 years old and we were having our youngest at the time,
Mhm.
there were quite a number of behavioral issues that we were coming across, and probably because of this big transition and in her life. But it was, again, it would take a couple of episodes to really dive into all of that. But it was a learning experience. It was a very frustrating and challenging time to have a brand new baby and then a 5-year old, as
Mhm.
well as another child, but the other one was sleeping, but the five was not sleeping and was wanting me all the time. Would not go to sleep at night and would have really challenging behavior, I'll say, at bedtime and overnight, waking up and being up for long periods of time. And then, therefore, the behavior just got worse and more
Mhm.
challenging, I'll say, during the day. So we sought help for parenting therapy for us, for her, for all of us.
Mhm.
Got some great strategies and info, but really hard to implement with 5-year-old in lots of ways. And myself as a sleep consultant, I got to say,
Mhm.
I I was embarrassed and like ashamed of like how come I can't help change
Yeah.
my child's sleep? Like what is happening?
Mm.
So when it's all said and done, what really came about, because for us, obviously sleep was an issue and we all needed better sleep. Um, but the behavior was just outstanding that we were always looking to that. But what we needed to do and when we finally shifted to say, hey, let's just do whatever we have to do to get the best sleep possible, because
Mhm.
we're trying to work on all things and, being consistent. Again, it would take so many episodes to dive into it all. But
Mhm.
when we decided, like, let's just focus on the basics. And I have to say,
Yes.
even for my own mental health, if I'm like, no, I have to do XYZ, hey, wait, go back to eating when you need to, and sleeping and making sure you're hydrated and getting outside,
Yes.
like all those things, it
Yes.
made such a difference when, like, within a day, 2 days,
Yeah.
like the world of difference in behavior the next day with just an extra bit of sleep. So
Yeah.
I love that you said that, going back to those basics and those
Yeah.
self-care pieces for
Simple.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Huge,
But
huge.
not easy. The simplest things are
Yes,
not
no,
easy.
right.
Yeah, and that's why coaching can be so helpful because coaches can find blind spots for you, right? And also keep you accountable. So with my private clients, I text them between calls. And so I can like check in and really help them move the needle in those like moments when they're breaking down and when they're like shoulding themselves, right? Like, I should
Mm,
be doing this. I should be
mm,
doing this. Like, let's just bring it back. It's actually less is more. I'm really about simple, small moments in time like that make a big impact.
nice. So
Yeah.
can I bring up a scenario?
Yeah.
This is maybe a common scenario, or something very similar is quite common in lots of little toddlers and little kids. Why are they crying because you handed them a toy with your left hand instead of your right hand? You know what I mean? Like, or you put the
Mm,
left foot shoe on before the right one, or you tied them wrong, or you, like, those little things.
mhm.
Where, what can we talk about what's going on there and how we could work through something like that? Because I think it happens to all of us that, unbeknownst to us, we did something quote unquote wrong. Um,
Mhm.
or before we were supposed to, what have you. And then that's a time where all these emotions come out. Is it kind of like, is there a buildup maybe? And then that was just like that one little trigger that they found to let it go? Because I know adults can do similar things.
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I don't think there's a magic answer. I think every child is different based on their temperament. But yeah, they want power. Children have power buckets, control buckets. And so we need to give them reasonable amounts of power and control in reasonable situations. Like, for example, I believe that children should, be able to choose what they wear, but not what they have for dinner, right? So it's like, okay, you want the blue cup? Fine, have the blue cup. Like, that's not the hill I'm going to die on. Um, if your child, just like you explained, like is having a really hard time at what something seems so silly and so insignificant to you, there's probably 10 things that happened before that that they couldn't express themselves, and the buildup, like you said, is just like kind of coming out in that moment.
Mm.
um, so I think it can be helpful just to not take it personally
Hmm.
and just like be in that mess with your child. Sometimes it's appropriate to just like move on really quickly, and sometimes, like, depending on how sensitive your child is, we just really need to like hold space.
Looking for the best for your baby? Atlantic Canada's baby store is here for you. Nurtured, which is right here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, has the best products for baby. The staff are so incredibly knowledgeable and helpful, and they have the most top rated car seats and strollers you won't find anywhere else. So whether you need expert advice or the perfect baby gear, Nurtured's got you covered. Shop online at nurtured.ca for local delivery or enjoy fast, free shipping with a low minimum spend. Nurtured, supporting your parenting journey every step of the way. I love that you said that too. It depends on the child. I think I can parent my three girls a little
Yeah.
differently because they're different
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
Um, but when if we go back to the holding space piece, so
Hmm.
meaning if they're crying or upset, we're letting them have that emotion. We're not saying like don't cry or don't, this is silly or anything like that. We're saying like, hey, I can understand you're upset about this, so I'm gonna let you cry.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
what about the times, because I've been there. What about the times where they're crying and crying and crying and we're holding space, all the space. But now
Mm.
it's like okay, now I'm late for work and we got to get to date. Like we actually
Yep.
have to get things moving. What
Yep.
are there scenario or strategies there that one could take? Like I think you mentioned too, where it depends on the temperament of the child, but sometimes
Yep.
there's moments where you want to get things redirected or moved on. But
Yep.
I'm always curious as to like, I want to hold the space. I hear that's really helpful thing to do. I want them to
Yeah.
be in tune with their emotions, but I also need to get somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a big sticky point for the parents that come to me. They're like, my child is so sensitive or so spirited. And like, I want to honor that and I want them to be fully themselves. But I like, we got to get through the day. Like, we've got to get through the day. And so there is like a fine dance that we have to do where we have to attune and figure out when we lean in and when we lean back. So if the child's having a really hard time and you validate the feeling and you kind of sit there with them, but then yeah, you're right. We have to process it. We have to move forward and we have to shift that energy. So a really important way to do that is just within ourselves, right? We can't
Mm,
control other people. And knowing that our children mirror us, they have mirror neurons, and knowing that they co-regulate with us, which means, they are going to like match the vibration that we're at, like the level that we're kind of managing at. So if we're frustrated and we're angry and we're kind of spinning because they have brought up that trigger in us, going to be a lot harder for them to move on. So the number one thing to process that is just to like manage it within yourself.
mm,
And so I sort of like the anchor and harbor analogy. This is one of the strategies I teach where I just like anchor myself when my child's having a hard time, which means that I find some grounding. I find some peace. Sometimes I have to talk myself out of off a ledge. We will
mm.
take things personally. We will default to wanting to stop it, to fix it, to hand them, the iPad and the granola bar. Like these are things that we want to do. And ultimately, we know they're not going to help our children long term. So, anchoring ourselves, telling ourselves, like, this moment will pass. I can do this. I have the tools. Like, I'm safe. There's nothing wrong with my child. He's not giving me a hard time. He's having a hard time. Like, phrases like that can be really
Mm.
anchoring.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
then we can open ourselves up to be that safe harbor. And that's the holding space piece. And then the best strategy to like process and move through an emotion is to um, probably access play. So it really depends on the situation, but play is the language of the child. So if we can enter their world through play, we've cried about the shoe and we found the shoe and the shoe's on and now we need to get in the car. We need to kind of, scoop them up and like rocket ship to the car seat because that's going to just move from our right brain to our left brain and shift things from an emotional space to more of a like thinking space.
Mm. I love that. Thinking about the play aspect.
Yeah.
What you said about like the different sides of the brain or different parts of the brain that when one's activated, when that emotion part of the brain is activated,
Mm-hmm.
the other part, that reasoning, logical part is turned
Mm-hmm.
off.
Offline,
So
totally.
no, there's no amount of you trying to say, oh, trying to explain a scenario or trying to make it right when they're having full blown emotion. They
That's
have to
right.
kind of calm down from that first. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sometimes parents will like over talk in that situation, which is
Yeah.
not helpful because just like you're saying, like if emotion is happening, the amygdala is like firing and they might be like in a state of fight or flight. They can't hear you. They can't think clearly. There's no problem solving. It's just comfort and safety.
Mm-hmm.
Just comfort and safety. Your only job in that moment is comfort and safety. Some children want to be alone, some children want to be held while they're coming down from that. Most children who want to be alone actually want you really close by.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
do
I've
you have one
noticed
of
that.
those?
I've
Yeah.
noticed that.
Like,
Yeah. I
I
want to be
hate
alone, but
you.
then you leave you and you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
no.
I hate you and I want you to leave my room, but like I don't hate you and I don't want you to leave my
But
room.
don't leave.
I'm
Yeah.
just like in pain and I'm like feeling so chaotic in my brain. So safety, so being close by and providing comfort, and then yeah, play. Play is like it's fun and it shifts things quickly, and children understand humor
Mhm.
and lightheartedness. They just they speak that language.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Um, what happens when parents don't agree, or maybe not, let's not go that far because like, that's going to be another episode probably. But when if they, because we're all brought up differently, we all have different ideas of parenting. I don't think a lot of expecting parents or couples are talking about like how are we going to parent in
Hmm.
the detail that is maybe required, but you don't know until you're there
Hmm.
sometimes. For
Hmm.
instance, if your toddler or your child is having a bit of a meltdown or a hard time in public,
Hmm.
and I'm just kind of coming up with this out of the blue, and like one parent might be inclined to like, oh, we're leaving, we can't be here, like, etc. And then another parent might want to maybe hold the space and let them have like just
Hmm.
different ways of parenting and doing things. And I'm sure like the situation would matter, the child's temperament and things
Hmm.
would matter. But when it comes to getting on the same page, how
Hmm.
important is that, and what do you recommend kind of couples or parents do to like talk about that?
That's such a good question. So you're never gonna do everything 100% the same, nor should you, right? Like,
Nor will you do it 100% correctly or right, or how you want to do it,
yeah,
how you envision it all going. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And like one parent's gonna have their way, the other parent's gonna have their way. Like even, men and women are gonna approach situations with their own femininity or masculinity. So there's like so many nuances. What's really important though is that the couple is really clear on what's important to them. So when both parents come to coaching, we do a lot of work around values. Like what is important to you? What's important to you as an individual? What's important to you as a couple? Like, how are you creating your own normal? What is family culture? Um, because once you're aligned on that, that's the starting place for boundaries. So boundaries is like a word that's very overused. But for me, it's just like, where am I saying yes and where am I saying no? And that's what's so tricky. And that's where parents can start to fight and have conflict in front of the child, which can feel, a little bit icky. But when both parents know what's important to them, for example, our family values are love, health, and freedom. So if something's going to help us get closer to those things, we're going to protect that a lot. And if something's going to take us further away from those things, we're going to protect that a lot. And anything else, it doesn't matter too much. So yeah, does that help?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And piggybacking on that
Mm-hmm.
is if with parents, they say we do have the same values, or you've talked about it and you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of on board with that, but then there could be different ideas about how to reach those values or achieve those or lean
Mm-hmm.
in that direction, right? In terms
Mm-hmm.
of whether a parent is going to be more inclined to raise their voice or
Mm-hmm.
not, or want to punish or time out or things like that versus talking it
I
out.
think one of the best things that a couple can do is just debrief situations. So if, the family unit fell apart that day or like something didn't feel good for you, there's just an opportunity to like talk about what happened. And that doesn't happen often. We're very busy. And by the time the kids go to bed, you know, the parents want to do their own thing or they're falling asleep. It's just we're not reflective about our parenting. And that's one of the best parts about coaching too, is like we get to talk about parenting outside of parenting. And so bringing specific examples where we can like role play and like, okay, how did that feel? How did that feel? Okay, you would do that differently next time. Great. You did this really well. Like, let's make sure that gets repeated. And just being reflective.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm jotting down all these notes because I want to summarize these at the end. But you're right, debriefing situations, and also maybe for older kiddos in particular, acknowledging if ever you were in the wrong. That's something I've been doing sometimes. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
overreact, or I didn't have the right answer, or I did say something wrong, or did something anyway. But the value
Totally.
in repairing something with your child, if you yourself found you're in the wrong, can be so helpful too. Hey.
Yeah, so helpful. We're human beings. Like we should be apologizing. We should be fixing our mistakes. We should be having a redo.
Mm-hmm.
Like parents often, we get run by ego and we think that, our children won't take us seriously if we change our mind, or they won't consider us the authority unless we, have a very strong stance or, but that's just not the case. We're all just like navigating it, and I think our children really appreciate those kinds of conversations. It lets them be human beings too.
Yeah, yeah. He and I do have those conversations pretty regularly because while I think sometimes we think are all we I think we all know how smart our kids are. Like there's no question that a lot of us are like, well, I know some 11-year-olds, but my 11-year-old, like, man, they're smart, right? So, um, and so because of that, I think we think that they're maybe older, they're more mature than they actually are. Like she's so
Mm,
smart, and I'm talking about my oldest right now, but I could say that about all of them, my 6-year-old, my
yes.
9-year-old, or even when they were 2 or 3. Look how smart they are. Look how quick they're learning and picking up things and talking to me and like putting things
Hmm.
together. So then we assume
Hmm.
that that maturity level in the brain is maybe there. And so I think after a few years of like finding you're repeating yourself a lot, like try with behavior, for instance, it's like, hey, they should
Hmm.
get it by now, shouldn't they? Like, so I've noticed that
Hmm.
kind of thing too, of having this expectation that they should be picking up what we're laying down as quickly as we're doing it, but they're still maturing. They're still a child. That
Hmm.
must be something. Is that something
Totally.
that comes up in conversations?
That's big.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what you're describing here is having like high expectations.
Mm.
And children really well, but generally, most people don't have training with children. And so most people, I would say, have very high expectations for their children. And that can become such a stressful point of contention. It's very disappointing for the parent and it's very stressful for the
Mm.
child.
Hmm.
Yep. Yep. So that comes up a lot. So part of my role is to help the parent understand, that's actually probably too much to expect from them, teaching them about development. And again, back to the like reparenting process, if the parent was, what we call parentified, which means like kind of given adult roles at a young
Hmm.
age, they will naturally have those same kind of expectations for their child. So that template that we're given, we automatically pass that down unless we figure out like this doesn't feel good and I want to change, but I don't know how to or what that change should
Yeah.
look
You got to
like.
consciously think about it. And
Yeah.
you're the conscious parent coach. So look at that. Um,
Mhm.
Honestly, Kim, I like, I don't know if it's been obvious, but I have so many scenarios. I have lots I would love to get into, and I'd
Yeah.
love to do this again sometime. But you've given us so
Mhm.
much to kind of think about and strategize around. I just want to highlight a couple of those things. I think a big theme we were talking about was when our children, when we see that they're upset, is changing the way we're looking at what is actually going on. It's not something they're doing to you. It's something they're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing. I love what you said about anchoring yourself first as the
Mm-hmm.
parent. Like they need to see what kind of behavior you want them to come back to, I think, right?
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
can't be that, we got to find a way for somebody to do that so that that way the child
Yep.
can do that. So regulating ourselves as the parent, super huge and important, and self-care and all of that lovely stuff. Holding space for the child and their feelings, because we can't try to navigate and strategize anything while that part of the brain is turned on.
Mm-hmm.
Accessing play, I think, was one that nugget I'm taking with me for sure. It's something that I
Mm.
just don't consciously think of, but you're so right that when we can give them, a lot of times, I think for my kids, it might be like connection that they're looking for, or I notice those
Yeah.
behaviors more if I haven't been around them for a lot of the day. They're looking for some of
Yeah.
that time. So anyway, that accessing play, I think, is really valuable. And then debriefing the situations too as parents and kind of making sure you're on the same page. Um, is that highlighting those points for you, do you think? Like those are my
Yeah.
takeaways that I really got from this conversation.
Yeah, we need to normalize how hard it is to be parents, and that everyone needs help. It like takes a village. Nobody should be doing this alone. And parenting is a skill. It's a learned skill. It's not something that comes naturally. So if you didn't have that modeled to you, or if you want new modeling, new narrative, new language, like you can learn that. And it's like the best gift ever for yourself and for your whole family unit.
Oh, it so is. It just can make things run so much more smoothly when
Yeah,
you just
because
have a better understanding of where your kid is coming from.
yeah, and parenting should be fun. Like, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy or simple or linear, but it can, feel good. It can feel joyful, and it can feel, a little bit easier most of the time. You don't have to be struggling all by yourself.
Right. Parenting is hard, but it's also true that it's amazing and wonderful and fun and all of
Yeah,
those things.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's like a hard that we get to choose, like a hard knowing that we're doing everything we can and we're trying our best, and like life's just a little messy. And then there's a hard where we're just like drowning because we're just caught in a cycle that we know we don't want to be in, but we feel that trapped. That's a different kind
Mm,
of hard.
totally. Where we might
Yeah,
need some help. So,
yeah.
where can people find you, Kim? Where are you? How can we reach you? Are you on the internet?
I am on the internet. Yeah, I hang out most of the time on Instagram. So at Roots and Wings Childhood. I also have a Facebook page and a website. It's all Roots and Wings Childhood. So I'd love to meet anyone listening. I also offer free 20-minute discovery calls. So if you have questions and you want any of this content personalized, I'd be really happy to meet you and hear more about your family.
Awesome. We're going to link to all of that in the show notes to make it easy for people to just click and go find you. I'll be calling you again, Kim, for a couple of things, but one of them probably to chat again because I think the information and just knowledge that you have around this is so valuable for parents, even for those that haven't had their baby yet or have just a new baby.
Mhm.
They're going to grow up. There will come a time where you might need to seek out some support or just learn about child development. So maybe this will help. So thanks
Mhm.
so much again
I
for
love
joining
it.
today. I appreciate it.
I love it. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks, Ashley, for having me.
If you're looking for more information or support along your parenting journey, check out birthbabysleep.ca. That's where you're going to find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. Lastly, but certainly not least, if you got something out of this episode or our show in general, leaving a rating or a quick review goes a really long way to helping others find us. So please consider leaving one. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.